Turn live chat on. Okay. Live chat is on. Wait for some folks to roll in. Make some tea. Rinse, repeat. We all know that feeling, like every day is different, but is it really? No. Today's a big old different day. Hard day, weird day, all amped up for various stress reasons. Today, my husband and daughter are headed to his mother's funeral, very far away, and I could not attend because we don't have anybody to tend, to all the animals and such. And so, it's unfortunate that I can't be there, and I do feel bad about it. But I also, as my grandma used to say, funerals are for the living. you know. Um, so I'm gonna make some tea, and then I'm going to distract myself by letting my brain flow about like ego and things in the herbalism world. Thank you for everybody showing in, rolling in. That was weird. I meant to say hello, everybody rolling in, and thank you for your condolences because people were saying condolences in this comment section. I'm gonna make some Nilgiri white platinum needle tea because I always find her pretty comforting. I also feel like I was hitting that moonlight white aged pretty hard, and I noticed that wrong with it, April. I noticed that I think it was giving me a little more caffeine than I needed right now. So, okay, I'm gonna get my water going. We're gonna 180. I really like this little teapot because I can turn this little knob right here. At some point I'll have to like show you closer up and I can tell it what temperature I want it to be at, you know. Um so yeah, I don't know. This morning was weird. I mean just in general, like in my mind I'm like the sky is falling, and or the sun is exploding, one or the other. And then my family has to go to a big city and that makes me always uneasy. I worry about them, and then it was like I have this routine where I wake up and doing things, and we eat our breakfast, and then before I go live, I hop on to the internet. I hop onto the comments section for like Facebook because I have to check comments and answer people's questions on like Facebook ads. Like it's part of work, right? Um, and, I'm used to like people like trolling me, making fun of the way I look, or just some weird crotchety Karen shit. But on occasion, and more often than I appreciate, there's like an herbalist in there swinging their purse around. Like, upset at me for one thing or another, feeling the need to like try to like validate themselves or like whatever. It's always like, oh, I see you want to pick a fight on the internet today. Right? And so but this particular lady, and I won't say her name, but this particular lady, like, it's really funny because she, like, conducts herself as, like, this, like, professional and, like, all this kind of stuff, and decided to be, like, on one of my ads, nonetheless, to be like, oh, do you have any human clinical studies to, like, prove anything you're saying? And I'm like, I mean, the thing to know if you're a clinical herbalist or otherwise is that there are very few human studies for herbs. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of stuff you can find out there about how it may or may impact your body. But, like, if you want to say, for example, like pine pollen. Like pine pollen is loaded with like androgens and DHEA and various testosterone, progesterone precursors and things like that. And I know from the past decade that I've been working with people and myself that pine pollen is really fantastic for helping with things like exhaustion, low libido, dry vagina, things like that. And also like TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, has been using it for thousands of years for that. So we know this stuff. But sometimes people get stuck in this idea that if they can't find something on PubMed that's about humans specifically, even though there's hundreds of studies showing it, increasing testosterone and hormone levels in rats, fish, pigs, things like that, right? They'll be like, nuh-uh. And I'm like, my God, woman. Like, if you get, like, I love studies. I love PubMed. and I love Science Direct and ResearchGate and everywhere else that you can look at stuff. But just because that there isn't a specific study about that herb, it does not somehow undermine what humans have known and used for thousands of years, right? It's a really thing to get stuck in. But what it comes down to is ego, and apparently I'm jumping right in. And you know, it and it's okay, and it is okay, and it's okay to have opinions. It's okay if one herbalist doesn't believe that pine pollen is good for anything, and it's okay if another one's like, pine pollen is the holy grail. It is okay to have these opinions. What I'm really trying to get at is like the ego that is. Ego plus herbalism equals feeling the need to attack somebody in their own lane, right? Like, so one thing that I don't do as an herbalist, one thing that I really don't recommend doing as an herbalist, no matter how small you are or how large you are, is coming in hot in somebody's comment section in their space, in their area where they're existing, and like trying to make yourself look bigger and badder and discredit. Right. Now, it's not to say that we can't have discussions back and forth and ask curious questions and being like, oh, have you seen this? Or are you curious about this? Or, oh, I was wondering. Those things are okay. Like, we're not like Highlanders. Like, like there can only be one. Like, where I always make that joke and it makes me feel old as fuck. But we can exist. We can exist with each other. But when you find yourself as an herbalist combing into people's comment sections and like ripping them and like trying to like discredit them in front of people, especially if it's like a Facebook ad where they're selling a product or a service, you are the problem. That is your ego not allowing somebody else to exist on their path. That is your ego telling you that you know better than everyone and everything that has ever existed because of your experience. Right? Like, so I know for a fact that in the United States, there's no such thing as a certified herbalist. Right? There's definitely no such thing as a master herbalist. These things aren't real. And you can go watch a video I have about that. It's all fake, right? It's all ego. But I don't go onto, let's say, the person who came at me this morning. I don't think it'd been 3 minutes. I think I forgot to flip it. I don't go, so we're going to have a long brew. I don't go on to, I might have actually done it. Let's see. I'm all amped up. I don't go on to another person's page. Yeah, that's ready. And tell them that, hey, in front of all their clients and stuff, by the way, this person's not certified in anything. They're just using that to like pull you in and make you pay more per hour than a doctor charges, right? I would never do that to somebody because ultimately I feel like people come to the knowledge when they come to the knowledge, and it doesn't mean that this person, whoever they are, whoever they could be, anybody, it could be anybody, doesn't have valid knowledge, right? It's just sad that they feel the need to mislead people, right, with a certification that doesn't exist in the United States. And so, it's unfortunate because it does come down to ego. It comes down to, especially women, we feel like the only way that we can be successful is if somebody else is failing. We feel like if that person has a post that has hundreds or thousands of comments on it, and we have a post about something that has no interaction, it's because that motherfucker over there took all the interaction, or all the sales, or all the clients, or all the views, or all the subscribers, or all the followers, whatever you want to place in there. It's very common for the female human brain in particular, and I bring that up because there is a difference between how male and females react to stuff like that. Men tend to, not all the time, but when men, they get more competitive and they push harder and they push bigger, right? Females tend to, not all the time, but again, every human is different. Females tend to find a reason like this is why it's not working, because you took this from me. Because it comes down to like our lizard slash monkey brain and like resources, right? Like we feel like somebody's stealing a resource from us. But and so I see that stuff and it makes me sad. It makes me sad because there's literally room for everybody. There's billions of people on this planet. Not one single person could somehow be everybody's herbalist. Not one single person could somehow help every person, right? And not one single person or herb could like fail every person, right? Like just because somebody might not have experience in their own way with working with a particular plant that helps with a particular situation, that does not mean that the entire world over has that same experience. And that's what a myopic mindset looks like. And that's a problem too. And ego tends to keep us like this. Because ego wants us to just know what we know. We are perfect and we know all. We have no room to learn unless, of course, we've paid money for it. Then we feel like it validates us in some way, right? But because of that, we can't be like, oh shit, I never thought about that. Or, oh, that's changed and different now. And I've talked about this before where like old hat herbalists will like they'll know a thing and at the time it was like valid information, but like if we learn something new we're like scared of it and we're like, no, that's not right. I'm like, yeah. And then we start throwing around threats and shit like that. It's somebody said it's a trained way of thinking. Yeah, it is. And I also want to put this out there that like it's not that these individual people are like bad people. It's just that they've been trained that way. They really have. And that's a great comment because what happens is as you're learning to be a clinical herbalist or a certified herbalist or all these things, you're told how to think and act and feel. And so you're like, okay, you have to like teach for money, sell for money. No information can be given freely. You have to pretend like you're open and accessible to everybody, but really you're not that accessible. And then if they pay you, you'll give them a little bit of information, right? But then that person takes a class or learns from you. They have that same I pay, you pay mindset, and it becomes, well, for lack of a better term, this big circle jerk of people who can like financially afford to step into like the big boys or big girls club of herbalism and access herbal healing. But that mindset also gets them attacking anybody who does the opposite, right? If you step out there on this herbal path and you are someone like me who teaches freely, who says fuck knowledge held hostage for profit, who talks against the lies of like certified herbalists in the United States, not the people in general, but the concept that you can be certified is an outright lie, right? And like just and like has like a successful-ish business, like, oh man, you are fucking just asking to like, you got a target on your back and you got to target hard. And so I am and am not used to it. I mean, I'm used to it, but my nervous system doesn't appreciate it. It's crazy. It's a shitty feeling. It's a shitty feeling. Like, no matter who you are, no matter what you've posted, if you wake up and you're going about your day and you see something online where someone's just trying to like not even have a conversation with you. There was no intent for conversation. There's no intent to learn. There's no intent for discussion. It's just an attempt to make you feel bad, invalidate you, bring you down. I don't care who you are, that feels bad, right? And it doesn't matter how many times it's happened to you. Every time your nervous system goes, ooh, all right? And I fucking hate the internet because of that. Honestly, if it wasn't how I was able to teach freely and it wasn't how I earned a living, I wouldn't have social media. I really wouldn't. I fucking wouldn't. I just wouldn't. I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have all of this stuff because it's madness. It's absolute madness, But and so I don't know. I think about stuff like that and it makes me sad. It makes me sad for people because like that person, and she is legion. It's not like about her specifically. It's about like the interaction of all of it. But like we could have had a conversation. We could have had an interesting, intriguing conversation about pine pollen and androgen levels, about what we've experienced. But instead it was like she came in swinging like her ego-filled like clinical master herbalist purse, right, to try to like vanquish the bad herbalist, right? Like, and it's sad because it does get lonely, and oftentimes, listen, I have a lot of herbalists who follow me, and a lot of you want to learn and be herbalists and stuff like that, and that's fantastic. But when it comes to other like have been practicing for a long time herbalists, that's fucking quiet. That is quiet because I'm a goddamn pariah. There's no other way to say it. There really isn't. I'm a pariah in that way because I talk about things that make them uncomfortable and they feel emotionally attached to money, right? So, like, if I say, you shouldn't hold knowledge hostage for profit, it's not as accessible as people think, there's no such thing as a certified herbalist, well, that's everything that they do, right? So they feel like it's a personal attack, even though I'm not attacking them personally. It's like how they make money, and as humans, we get really, really attached. Like, you can be working in a fucking horrendous industry, herbalism or otherwise, and if that's how you're paying your bills and that's how you're doing, that's what you're doing, if somebody talks against it, even if it's the absolute truth, emotionally you will defend it. That's just the way it is, because we just, it's like Stockholm syndrome. uh and so if I was going to be an herbalist, if I was starting all over again, I wouldn't change a fucking thing. But no, I mean, if you are starting out, the main thing that I suggest is to stay in your own lane. But that also means that you become your own herbalist, that you create your own identity, your own voice, your own knowledge. It's not that you aren't learning from other places, and it's not that you can't like communicate with other people, but there's this thing in the herbalism world where that circle jerk I talked about, where it never stops. Like, they'll say who they learned from, and they'll say who they learned from, and how many hours they learned from, and what they learned from. And actually, the only people that ever inevitably end up breaking out ahead of the pack are typically ones who stop name dropping to validate themselves. Right, like, but a lot of people don't like that to happen, and they guilt trip you a lot because they want you to say their name again and again and again. Like, you can learn from me and you can tell people that you've learned from me, but I want you to know that, like, you don't have to. Like, if you know how to make a nettle tincture or an infusion or a tea or whatever I've taught you over the years, that's now your knowledge too. Like, you now know this. Right? You don't have to like bow down to me like every like video or post you make. It's fucking wild. Um, and if somebody asks you who you learned under, you can say who you learned under. And I've seen the opposite happen. If you aren't what somebody considers a big name herbalist, oftentimes people will then, like, as they're trying to become a big name herbalist, they will like straight up take your information and then try to present it as their own. And then that's a little problematic, because it's one thing to like not have to name drop somebody again and again. It's another thing if you like take their work literally and like change a little bit of words and then try to pretend like 10 months ago you were a hairdresser. Right? Like, it's crazy how often that happens. And then there's this other thing that happens where, because fuck it, I'm just exploring all of it today. There's this other thing that happens where if an herbalist they've just started, they've maybe learned under somebody, and then they feel like they're going to step out on their own, which again is perfectly fine. And then they either, if they don't start taking your work, they feel the need, and this goes right back to the beginning of the conversation, they feel the need to try to undercut or cut down the person that they learn from to raise themselves up. And that links right back to the women don't feel like they can be successful if somebody else is. Like, that's probably 85, 70% of what I experience most of the time these days. It's usually like an herbalist who like is trying to become an herbalist, so they feel like they need to like take one out to like make room for it, right? And it's so fucking sad. It's so fucking sad, and it's so exhausting. And what bugs me about it the most is that, like, I'm in my own lane. I'm just over here, being like, oh, I'm gonna do tea time today, and oh, I'm nervous about my family having to go to the big city for a funeral, and I'm this and that, and I'm gonna get tomatoes put out today, and I look at the internet, and the random herbalist is attacking me just vaguely, even though I've literally never seen her or talked to her or done anything to her or commented on anything. Right? And that's what I mean by like stay in your own lane. Like, don't be the herbalist, and I know we've all been there. We're human, and I've definitely in the beginning, like, because I got a mouth on me, I've been that person, but also like being that person lets me know that I don't want to be that person. Right? It's been a long time since I've been that person, because I started realizing it's just not worth it. Like, but it's also the same reason that I don't really follow other herbalists, because I don't even want the bait. I don't even want like to see the temptation to like step in or challenge somebody like directly on something that they've put out there into the world, because that's their corner, that's their space, and I fucking respect that, right? Like, what I always laugh about with social media is like, you really gonna walk up to somebody and talk to them like that in real life? Right? Like, would you really do that? And if you do, I worry about your mental health. Right? Like, if you would really like challenge somebody that you've never really met or talked to in that way, you wouldn't. But like, the internet creates this animosity, or well, not well, definitely animosity, but like it anonymous. Like, it makes you feel anonymous even though you're right there, and you forget that there's a human on the other end of that, you know. And so yeah, it's just exhausting, but I feel bad. But I feel bad because there are so many people that want to enter the herbalism realms in regards of working in herbalism versus just using herbs for themselves and family and friends and stuff. And you get the impression that um, these people are super loving. You know, I love you, brother bear, sister bear, love, light. We're all inclusive here. That's such a fucking load of shit. I can't tell you. As a person who has worked in the herbalism industry for a decade, a vast majority of herbalists, especially female herbalists, are fucking underhanded, cutthroat, like, say, like, act really, like, backstabbing, like, all kinds of stuff like that. It's fucking wild. And I say that because in the beginning, when I first stepped into the scene, social media, which wasn't really a thing that I used a lot back then. I was this new shiny object that a lot of the well known social media herbalists were like intrigued by. And they saw me growing and they saw me blowing up. And, they're like, oh, we're going to add you to these like community chats and we're going to start doing, giveaways together and all this kind of stuff. And at first I was real fun. Like, at first they liked me, like I was a novelty, right? But eventually, when they realized I'm this all the time, when my mouth continued to exist and I continued to talk against, knowledge held hostage for profit and issues I see in the herbalism realm, they were like, woo. They start backing away, right? They start saying things like, I'm too much. I have too much trauma to be, teaching people anything, that I'm overwhelming, that there's something wrong with me, that I'm this, that I'm that. It's fucking wild. And the funny thing is, in the beginning, they had added me to so many groups. They had added me to so many various like groups and things that they had forgot to take me out of all of them. So I saw a lot of what they were saying. I just didn't say anything. I just watched it happen, and then I watched it happen and I watched the same people message me independently acting completely different, and it's not just like it was a few people. It was like a lot of people, and I've watched it happen over the years. I've watched people pretend to be one way and pretend and be something completely different on social media, which isn't like unique to the herbalism realms at all. But it's so it's so funny. It's so funny to like, I don't know. It's funny to see because it doesn't mean that everybody's a bad person, and we're all human and we're all capable of treating people ways that we shouldn't, or saying things that we shouldn't, or like being overwhelmed by a person with a neurodiversity, things like that, right? But I don't know. It makes me laugh because like I see the things that they post that are all love and light, but I know that they're full of shit. And so I literally laugh because it's fucking entertaining. It's fucking entertaining at the least. And I don't know. And so oftentimes I don't even like, I get invited to like various like herbal conferences and things like that pretty often, and I always turn them down. I always turn them down because it's not like I don't want to teach people, or like, I mean, I guess it would be neat to go to an herbal conference, but I don't really think that I'm cut from the correct cloth for that. Because my mouth would probably get me trouble up there on stage. But I also don't want to be surrounded by people. I don't mean the people that are coming to see everybody, but like you inevitably have to be like around all the other herbalists that are going to be there. And I just don't feel like being around that. I just don't feel around like being around the people who don't wish me well, that I know wouldn't want me to be there, that I know will criticize me for things that I've said or done or how I acted, or I make them feel whatever, and I don't want to subject myself to that. And it's not out of fear or anything like that. It's out of like my own personal boundaries of what I want to insert myself into. Because it would be fucking wild, because if I stepped onto that stage, everything that I would say everything that I would say would, in a way, undermine what everybody else was going to say. Right. If I sit there and talk about, like, no knowledge held hostage for profit, it's fucked up that you paid for this ticket, and all kinds of stuff like that, all the other people that would get on the stage after that wouldn't really appreciate my stance, and so yeah, I don't know. I do my own thing. I stay in my own lane. I pay attention to what I need to do to take care of myself and my family, and the things that are important to me when it comes to teaching herbalism. And I just sometimes it's just, I don't know. I probably would have just blocked and deleted the comment right off the bat on any other morning that I wasn't all like worked up from like being nervous about, family going to the city and not being able to go to a funeral, and just life in general. But sometimes when I'm too exhausted to mask or hold back a reaction is when this type of shit pours out. But it's important. Somebody said it's just jealousy, April. That's a terrible emotion. You're so much better than them. I don't think I'm better than anybody. I think I'm just different. But we're all different. Every single person's different. And I think that's what it comes down to, is like, we have a hard time when somebody is different than us, letting them exist in that difference. You can apply that to any section of human reality. Race, culture, religion, belief, sexuality, anything. It applies to anything, And in the herbalism world, if you're not towing like the line, if you're not telling people to believe, act, and pay the way that everyone else has been taught to, you're a monster to them. You're something big, bad, and scary, and you threaten their reality, right? And so, and it's sad, but the truth is they're still welcome at my table, right? Like, it's just that most of them don't show up wanting to have any sort of discussion or conversation. They show up automatically defensive and wanting to fight, right? Even if they're like, oh, I really respect you, but because you have to learn to speak that underhanded, right? Be like, that was real fucking polite, but it was also really rude, right? Like, and it's really like passive aggressive. And also, I will say, just so you know, there's a lot of covert narcissists who become herbalists. I've noticed that a lot, and as a person who's like escaped like severe narcissistic abuse and kind of grew up with it, I spot it out. Right, but like there's this thing, I don't know if those of you who haven't lived with a narcissist know that there's several different types of narcissists. The covert is pretty dangerous because they're not outright, but another one that they're just starting to like uncover that I think a lot of us has known about for a long time is what they call a community narcissist. A community narcissist has the need to like heal, help, be in charge, be seen as like the god on the pedestal that has like all of these like answers to your questions, and only they know what's best for you. And they can actually become like, if you're living with them in person, they become like almost like Munchausen by proxy shit, where they can like make you sick, right? They can make you sick on purpose and make you really stressed out or this, and then they come and they rescue you, but they also often insert themselves into like lots of like charities and things like that, because it's a way to like feed their ego, right? And so it's really prevalent in the herbalist world. But what's interesting is I actually see a lot of it in male herbalists too. One of the worst narcissists I ever fucking knew was like a male herbalist that would like heal all of your problems while accidentally giving you an abortion because he didn't know that, you shouldn't drink fucking pennyroyal tea at any time in your life, especially not when you're pregnant for cramps. That's fucking wild, but like, they really exist and they're really prevalent. and because of that, you can't challenge a narcissist. And if you somehow threaten their reality, you are a danger, right? Like you are a danger to their reality and to their fantasies and all the lies they've built up about themselves. They kind of get what's like liar's justice, where like they lie so much that they end up believing their own lies, and like that in itself is kind of the definition of narcissism, right? Like they like gaslight themselves into believing like all these things about themselves, and if anything challenges that, they fucking go on the attack pretty hard. But yeah, I see a bunch of people asking about questions. I'm clearly on a tirade about something different here. Tomorrow is my Friday health Q&A, so that means tomorrow morning I will be answering all of your health questions, and I'm trying to do them pretty rapid fire. I want to say last time in like a solid 40 minutes or so, I probably answered 20 plus questions, if not. And then also, I have like hours and hours and hours and hours of free herbal Q&As that you can go read and watch. Some of them are literally hours long. My old school ones, before I would like put boundaries between my brain and my body, because my brain doesn't know that my physical body has limitations, are like 3 hours long. Right. There's probably not a question that I haven't touched on at some point, at least adjacent to a question you may or may not have. So definitely go look at that. And I see the person screaming in all caps about what to unclog arteries. I don't know. What's your vitamin K level doing? Right. Anyhow, so if you like to support my capacity to just fucking rant and rave sometimes, or be a real human, or, talk about what I'm up to during the day, or teach freely, and just generally be a real human here with you that's impacted by things going on in their life, consider becoming a member. It's a way to just toss me a couple bucks a month for the work that I do. It helps me keep a roof over my head and tea in my pot, and just be here teaching freely and things like that. You do get early access to videos if I happen to upload them early in the week, which lately I really haven't been able to. I'm just going to be honest about it. If you can't afford to become a member, don't worry. The videos are always published on the weekend for everybody to see. So there's no paywall. On occasion, there's a tiny time wall. Right. You can also call things home from my apothecary. I make something for everybody. I've got all kinds of capsules and books and things like that. You can use the one-time code TEATIME, TEATIME, to save 10% off. It is directly how we exist. It's how we pay for everything. It's what we do for a living. So that is genuinely helpful. If you can't afford to do any of that, or even if you can, making sure that you like, comment, subscribe, turn on notifications, and sharing. Sharing is super important because it helps get my work out there. It helps other people realize that they are smart enough to do this, that they can be a real human, that they can have bad days, that they can exist in all of this and still practice and learn herbalism freely, because we're all smart enough to do this. So thank you so much for watching, folks. And reminder, tomorrow, Friday, is the live health Q&A, so definitely be sure to join tomorrow. If you had questions for me today or any other day that I didn't get to, I answer those on Friday. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see everybody tomorrow. Bye.